So in this video, we're going to speak about needle hang. So when people say needle hang, what they really mean is how far from that plastic little end till the end of that. So how many millimeters, or what's the distance between that? And then why do I say so many videos you need to do a few clicks out and a few clicks in? It's all about that. It's like, what is the distance between needle being out from the plastic cartridge? Stroke would be different things, so don't think about it. But all you need to think is, what's the distance between end of that plastic till it touches my skin, like that. Like, what's the distance? That's needle hang. And needle hang changes on so many things, and this video is gonna make you feel guilty, and there'll be so many obvious moments that you're gonna be like, yeah, I understand. So where we're gonna start is from the skin. So when we are looking at even like my hand, for example, like the skin here will be different than skin there, and then skin on the inside arm will be different than my thumb, and then the bony areas. So when we think about skin, we don't think about one skin. Like when you first started saying, you're thinking this is skin and that's it, that's all it is, it's skin. But actually skin, like these skins are in my house, and then that's why I'm able to show you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different examples, because I have 5 different skins. But reality is there's more different skins than these 5. That's all I had in my house. But like the application that you do to this thin skin would be different than you do this skin, and then different to this skin, and different to this skin, different to this skin. So for example, what I mean by this is quite squishy skin, quite nice, quite juicy. This is the foolish butcher skin, and as you can see, it's really like a human skin. Like that's how you would imagine my leg would be if you would tattoo. So this would nicely, easy represent a leg, like really nicely juicy leg. This could be your back, this could be your ribs, not ribs, but like underneath the ribs, below the ribs, waistline. But it's nice and squishy, so that's cool. Then we have, for example, this skin is really tough. Like, I don't know if you can see, but it's like a rubber, and it's quite a hard one, quite a tough one. It's a really good tattoo, but this is for areas like upper arms, outer arms. It could be your shins, it could be your calves, where the skin's so hard, it goes in really nice. Like you don't have to do too much, but it just goes in beautifully. Then we have these kind of skins, which is thinner. As you can see, it gets thinner and thinner. And then this one would be your maybe hand, outside the hand. It could be your wrist area, where it gets just thinner, and to make a blowout super easy. Then we have this skin, which is, as you can see, maybe like 2 millimeters thin, and that would be my knuckles, for example, my bones, my here. It could be a rib cage, where you physically have a thin layer of skin just over the rib, and there is no muscles. Some areas there's just no muscles, all it has is just that. It could be your forehead, where you got only a thin layer of skin over your bones. Your knees, it could be elbow, it could be that. Or we have the underneath skin, which is the real skin, and this is like the generic everyday kind of area, for example. So I'm giving you different examples to kind of give you indication that there is not just one skin, one way. It's not gonna all feel the same, it's not gonna all look the same, it won't go in the same. So like this is one of those aha moments. So imagine, would you have one setting like this, for example, if it spins, like this, it's out maybe like 3 to 4 millimeters. So how easy would be to tattoo this skin with this setting? Nice. This gets a little bit harder because we can blow out pretty easy. What happens here? It would shred this skin. What would happen here? This skin would be punched like nothing, and then you could easily carve out images. So like you can kind of see how you would have to change the needle hang because the skin changes. But I can guarantee you $1,000,000 people never change needle hang on any skin they are. They just run the machine, and the machine just spins, and they just try to do the whole tattoo without one needle hang, and they don't even think about to do this. Click, click, click. Like, why do you think companies have made this as an option, where we can click and even make RPG kind of little bubbles inside, so it gives you a hard spin, so it doesn't spin in your hand by natural? Like, why do you think that is built in there? It's because we have to change the needle hang based on the skin, because the skin is not the same. Because my skin on my fingers are really thin, gets a little bit thicker when it gets to my hand, and then when it's on my arm, it's more thicker, and then my thickest skin would be probably on my thighs, maybe stomach, where it just naturally gets thick. So you cannot tattoo with this needle hang all of those. It's doable, but when you first start, this skin, you're gonna carve it out. You're physically gonna cut out, you're gonna carve out that people's skin. So when people say I've overworked the skin's like shredded and all that, what happens is people have really small needle hang, so like that, where you can barely see the needle, maybe like 1 mil out. I don't know, you can't even see the needle, can you? Just like barely. So this is when the smart people say riding the tube, which is the worst you can do, like worst thing you can ever do. And this is where the needle hits the softest. So the more needle is in, it hits softer. The more it's out, it punches. So let's say if we are more in and you go over like this, you're thinking, man, it's not going in, I need to push in a little bit more. And then people start to push in and they start to like proper shred the skin. And guess what? Then your friend messages you, says, man, you overworked this. And you're like, man, what could be the cause? But the cause is that needle is too far in. Unlike areas like this or this, when the skin gets thicker and thicker, no ink will ever go inside if you have this much. Like the thicker the skin, the more needle hang it requires. Yeah, so when it comes to like really bony areas, that's when you have to be quite in. So maybe not as deep as this, but probably about 3 mil, 2.5. So I'm trying to give all this as a backstory to why we have to change, and then you do have to change. You have to change the needle hang, and I would recommend to change every moment you feel like you have to change. And then what will happen is when you have too much needle hang, like too much for the wrong area, that's what I meant to say. Because when it's like this, where you can see maybe it's like 3 millimeters out, 3-4, when you tattoo like this skin where it is soft and wobbly, it'll feel nice. It's gonna feel exactly what you need. But then when you go to tougher areas, this needle hang could be too much. So you have to do 1-2 clicks in, and it's a small change, small tiny change, but your machine's gonna feel it and you will feel as well. Then suddenly working on this tougher skin or less bouncier skin is gonna feel amazing, it's gonna feel okay, it's gonna feel nice. And then when you go to like really hard skin, you can kind of hear it starts to scream more. So this skin gets like picked up almost because it's too thin. So when you go to bonier areas, you have to do 1 click again in like this. And now the punch versus what the ink goes in will match. But then the more ink is inside, well, the more needle is inside, the more ink will bring out. Which means now you run into in position where you could have too much ink coming out because your needle is too far in. Which means you have to be really careful of how much you pick ink, where you start, and then which direction ink will flow. So for instance, let's say my arm, yeah? So imagine there's bone. You can't even see a bone, so there's literally a bone underneath there. So that would represent this thin skin. And if you go with too much needle hang, you basically will not tattoo in my skin, you will tattoo through my skin. It will go way too harsh. And the machine is not going to feel resistance because the feedback is really through there. So let's say now we have approximately 4 millimeters out. It looks probably bigger, but it's actually not that much. And then see when you have a squishy skin like this, it's necessary. So let's see if we can kind of demonstrate. I'm gonna tattoo on the edge and see when it goes that deep in, it can line. It would go that deep. It's probably not the easiest way to demonstrate. But essentially, when you have thicker skin, you need to have needles more out, otherwise you won't be able to pull that line. Now when we go to a little bit less bouncier skin, you can see how it changes the noise, which means it punches in harder. And you need to think about the feeling you get, the feeling what you have when you pull a line and it's a clean line, it's a good line. You need to remember that feeling and always aim for that feeling. So it's more about feelings than you think. Now let's say we go to a different skin where it's thinner. And you probably can hear it. It sounds different, sounds a little bit louder. Sounds like the skin is asking for mercy. and it is more pain. And then see if we go to the really thin one, which would be your bones, your bony areas, side of the head, knuckles, fingers, shin, all the areas that are just really thin. You will see how it's just going to be way louder. And see how easy with this needle hang is to bang it through. Super easy. You can see the skin even bounces. The skin is so tiny, so fragile. And you would say, what? This is probably too much needle hang. And I would say, yes, you're right. So what do you think we should do? We should bring the needles a little bit more in. What do you think people do in tattoo shops? Nothing. They just carry on. They would just try to make it work with whatever the needle hang they have, and they would not twist. They would not. They just don't do. They carve people's skins open, but they would not change anything. And now, let's say if we go and we actually spin, I don't know if you can see, but let's say the 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks in. So I want to see if I can find a perfect needle hang for this type of skin. So let's say how this feels. See, there's no bouncing, skin's behaving. Ideally we should stretch the skin, but this is a fake skin in and there's not human, which is the reason I don't stretch. But you can see the skin behaves, the skin's alright, skin's doing fine. It is louder because you would have bone underneath, and this needle hang would be quite good for this area, for this skin. It's fine. But let's say if we go back to this skin with this needle hang. Now this is thicker skin, which means it's not going to be punching in anymore. Now it's turning into shading version. As previously here it lined lines, this would be shading. Now it shades. So you can decrease the needle hang, which then turns your liner into a shader, and now you can shade smooth. And you can hear it sounds pretty satisfying as well. It comes out nice and smooth. Now let's say if we go to thicker skin, which is even bigger, and let's say if we keep exactly the same needle hang that we had in the first skin, the bony skin. As you can see, it doesn't even tattoo. Like, it hits so soft, they can't even see the ink in there. I do have shading ink, just so you think why the black is not being black. But this is a shading ink what I'm lining with now. But as you can see, when the skin is too bouncy or too soft, when you have needle hang what's too deep in, nothing's gonna happen. Like, you can be hurting that person, he will feel the pain. The needle still pierces the skin. Like, it actually hurts. Just nothing's gonna happen. And then what we need for these skins, we need to bring the needles more out. But for this instance, we just crack on and we're gonna continue with this needle hang, representing the people who never change the needle hangs and they just hurt the clients for no reason. And guess what's gonna happen? I gotta work here for so long to make it so dark, which I need, for example. And what do you think happens to skin? Skin gets shredded, but I still need to get quite dark. What do? Nothing. Like, people don't do anything. People don't change the needle hang. People just carry on. So now you know that when you have a softer skin, you need to bring the needles more out for something to happen. If you don't have the needles far enough, and if the skin is too soft, wobbly, jobbly, and there's too much human fat underneath, nothing's gonna happen. You're gonna hurt the client, but no ink will go inside. And then by the time if you try to make it as dark as you wanna, the skin's shredded. The skin is so punctured because as the needle spins, like, imagine how many holes that needle just pierced now, like this instance. Many holes. What happens to human skin? Exactly the same. The skin gets so pierced, that skin just gets so damaged that the body decides to rebuild a new one, and it drops off the old one, and then your tattoo goes away, ink goes away, and there's nothing inside, then big scar, and then you have to wait for who knows how long for the body to recover so you can tattoo again. But now let's say if we go to that thickest skin what we have, and as you can see, it's quite thick. And then just before we start, what do you think is gonna happen? Or what do you think is not gonna happen when we're gonna tattoo with this needle hang, this area? And you probably know by now that nothing's gonna happen. Like really light shading is gonna stay inside, which means by the time it heals, there is no ink inside anyway. Like, it's pointless. You physically, when you have these bouncy skins where you can see it's squishy and bouncy, and that would be just normal arm, that would be upper arm, that would be thigh, that would be just person with a little bit more body fat. Like, that's just normal skin. That's how people are, squishy. Which means when you tattoo like this, you can try to force it work, you can try to make it work, but what's gonna happen is you're gonna kill that skin. You will shred in pieces. So the idea of this video is to understand that the moment we go from this skin, let's say if this is my thigh, yeah, this is your tattooing my thigh. Let's say maybe arm. Let's say you tattoo my arm. This is my upper arm, nice and squishy, and you're pulling those lines. You're going towards more the shoulder, which means it now goes towards this skin where my bones start to appear. What you need to do with your machine, I'll give you 2 guesses. Well, all you need to do is get your machine and bring those needles a little bit more out. No, in. So when you tattoo my upper arm, this is how far needles would be out. It's like 3 to 4 millimeters, depending what my arm feels like, because you need to aim for the feeling. The feeling says it's good enough, it's far out enough. And if you feel like when you pull that line and then the link is not enough, you do 1 click out. See how that feels. You pull another line, you're thinking maybe 1 more. You do 2 clicks out, and now when you line the line, it just goes in perfect. And that's cool, like perfect. So you know, tattooing, needles this much out, and now you go towards my shoulder. You get to my shoulder and you realize you can start to feel the bones underneath. So what you do, you go from this, you do 1 or 2 clicks, click, click, in, and now you try with this. You work, and you're thinking, yeah, that's nice, I could do with this. But then you think, oh, I need to pull that one line that goes a little bit more towards the like upper shoulder just before I do the other lines. So then we skip this skin and we go straight to this. So what do you think you need to do now? If you're gonna tattoo with this, you will carve a hole in my shoulder, like you will. You would need to go 2 clicks down, or maybe 3, 4, maybe 1 more, and you realize you try. You're like, yeah. You can see the fake skin is behaving. You're like, I can do with this, and then you work with this, and as you can see, the needle up is barely out. Well, in the camera it looks like it's a lot out, but it's actually really, really small out, like really small. But you can see it works. It goes in nice, it's controllable, and it doesn't go through. Like this is the other side, there's no ink, it doesn't go through. It doesn't carve me open, which is beautiful. It's exactly what we need. And every time when we go to a new area, when we go from one skin type to another skin type, we change the needle hang. Like we change, we don't stick to it. Because if we work on my bone and you're like, oh shit, okay, cool, I've done what I needed to do now, I can go back to my previous area, which is the skin here. Now if you continue with this needle hang, not much gonna happen. It hits too soft. You need to go to previous settings, which means you need to do 1, 2, 3 clicks out, dip into the ink and see what happens. See if that was the previous setting. And then you work and you're like, no, I think I did 1, 2 clicks more. So we do 2 more clicks out, see how that feels. Yeah, I can feel this. This is nice. This is good. I can work with this. And this is how you change all the time. Like 5 times a minute, 2 times a minute, once a minute, once in 2 minutes. Like you don't change because you need to change or you want to change. You have to. Like when the skin changes, you have to. It goes from this skin to even in the end we have the real skin. But it goes from my mid arm to a shoulder. And that skin drops and changes. And you have to change. You cannot continue with the same needle hang here to here. You have to change. If the feeling's alright, and if the feeling says that it works perfectly here and works perfectly there with the same needle hang, cool, you can have that. But majority of the time, at one area, this will feel too evil, and you can almost see like it's the whole length of the skin. There you can see, like if you push too deep, it's literally gonna tattoo my bones, and bone tattoos are not cool. To blow out, super easy. To blow out here, quite harder, because it doesn't even go to the epidermis yet. It would only be where it needs to be, and that's cool. But the story of this video is, when you do a tattoo, you have to go, you basically go from working on this skin, then you suddenly work on this skin, you do some work, then you go to the thin ones and you do some work on the thinner skin. But before that, you need to do this little writing that's like here, and you need to change the needle hang, and then you change the needle hang, and you change again, and you change from here to here. Like you have to click, 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 do those clicks non-stop. And it's all to aim that feeling. That feeling says it's perfect. And that feeling is when you pull a line. I'm probably gonna have a really light line because I have a shading ink now. But when you pull a line, it just works. It doesn't like semi-work, kind of work, but it just works. You can just pull a line and it's there and it's black, and you just continue, and you never need to come back. You never need to return. You don't need to do again and again and again. It's one time, one pass, one clean line, and forget about it. Like once it's done, and you move on. That's the feeling we always aim. And you can think of a needle hang in terms of a distance. What needle is aftermarket that just makes lines work, what makes shading work, what makes packing work. And the skin is the one what tells you how far it needs to be out or how far it needs to be in. The skin will scream if you are too far out, and if you're shredding the skin will yell at you if you are abusing the skin. It'll go red, it'll go sore, it's gonna swell up if you are too far out. If you have a swelling on your tattoo, that mostly is when people, one, don't stretch the skin, second, is tattoo too deep and the needle hang is too far out and it's just punching too many holes too deep. Whereas if you have the right needle hang, it just works. And now let's say we have these lines, and if I have the wrong needle hang, for example, if I do 1, 2, 3, 4 clicks in, maybe do 2 more, just so it really shows. This would be ideal on the first skin, like the thin one. But let's say if we are on a real skin now, which is thicker. Well, this kind of failed because real skin still takes ink in too good. This shouldn't work, but it works because real skin is too soft and it just takes in. But on the human skin, it would just not work. It would be really, really light gray line. It would be more like on this skin where needle hang is too small and then it doesn't get packed in. It's gray, like it's super, super light gray. And then mostly what people do, they try to force it, they try to make it work. They push in with the machine, with the weight, with the hand. They start to squeeze in. They work 4 or 5 times over the kind of the number of how many times you can go over the limit. And people push the limits, and the skin's just damaged. Skin is like abused. And this is how many people, how other tattoo artists' tattoos heal. Like they just look faded, they look light, they look gray, they look damaged, they look uneven, they look bad. And when we have a really, really light thin skin, like baby thin, like this thin one again, which is your knees, your elbows, you have to bring the needles in and then it works. You can create nice, clean, juicy black lines with really small needle hang. Because the distance between the skin surface and the bone is like 1 millimeter or 2. It's super close. So these lines you can blow out like nothing. You can go through the skin like nothing, like super fast, super easy to damage. So when it's a bony area, you have to bring the needles in. When you have a little bit more meaty area, you can bring the needles out. As you can see, if I flip over, nothing went through. If I have my needle hang too far, let's say if we do 4 clicks out and I do right next to it, well, the problem is I had to do it for too long to not push it through. But if I try to pretend somebody who just started, I could apply the same pressure that I just did, and you can instantly hear it. My machine's carving out the skin. It's almost like, well, it is carving out. It's tattooing the bones as well, probably. My client would be suffering massively, would be dying, and you can kind of imagine what clients would say about you. And then before we flip over, I have a feeling that did go through. And as you can see, that went through quite nasty. Well, it's not through, but you can see the distance between the right amount needle hang and way too much needle hang. I don't really want to try to really push it through because I know I'm just going to carve out the hole, but it gives you a good idea of if you have the right needle hang, it's good, it's inside the skin. And if you have too much needle hang on a bony area, it goes through, like it goes through the skin. This could be easy, a blue cloud around it. So when it heals, the person could have like a blue cloud around like that, like darkness around your tattoo, because the ink went through the skin and just exploded sideways. And then it looks like this, gray, muddy, dirty looking tattoo, something like that, where you got a clean tattoo and you got some ink spreaded underneath the skin. So to recap this, as we remember, we have thin skins, we have thinner, we have thicker, we have chunky ones, and then we just have average one. And your job is to change your needle hang on every single skin type. You have to be in a position to think about the skin changing. Think about how it goes from one area to another area, how it becomes from a thin baby skin, a really fragile one, to straight into a thick one. And you have to change your settings in your head. You have to do differently now. Like instantly you go from here to here, you need to become a different person. You can't do with the same mindset anymore. You have to be like super duper careful here, and you can be more free here. And then you can have more fun here, you can have longer strokes, you can do this. You have to be really mindful when you get in the baby's skin. And you can cause a lot of trauma. Imagine when you need to pack in red in like this baby skin. There's not much for the skin, for the ink even to sit inside. Like when you need to tattoo elbow and you need to black it out, for example, the black ink has to sit inside this really, really thin skin. Like you need to be really, really careful. You can't have the same mindset when you tattoo this skin, which was the arm. And if you to do like full arm blackout, this would be the lower forearm, this would be somewhere closer to the elbow, and then you get to the elbow and you're just about in the bone. But the thing is, how black is this is how black this needs to be. Exactly the same. But you have to change, and then you have to change the needle hang to adjust what is required to get that black. And you have to aim for that feeling, what you know when you pull a line, the line is in there. And then the second you pull a line with the same feeling, with the same pressure, with the same speed, and you know it should be in, but it's not, most likely that indicates that you have to change the needle hang. You have to twist a little bit out, a little bit in, depending where you are, but you have to change there and then. And then me personally, I change about easy twice a minute, maybe once a minute. Some, like, it's super rare when you have a really big area where no skin changes. Like that rarely happens. So imagine even if we look at my hand, this area is squishy, like it's nice and squishy. You would need to like pull my hand sideways, up or down, depending how to get, but you would need to like stretch that skin to pull a line here, which means that would be this skin. It's the squishy one, it's bouncy. So you can have quite a lot of needle hang out, because if the needle will be pushing the skin away, we're not going to pierce it. It won't pierce it. You have to have needle hang quite far out in order to pierce it. It has to like punch through my skin. But then really quickly it goes from squishy to hard, and there's nothing you can squeeze in here, like it's bone. So really quickly we go from a really squishy area to non-squishy. So we go to this, I would probably say that skin there, which is like a rubber, like there's nothing underneath, barely. So there is some squishiness to it, which it's not like bony. Like no squishiness would be my knuckles, where they just rock hard, like there's no bounciness whatsoever. But then this is just before that, so this would be like this skin, so which means you would need to ease off a little bit. You can't behave like this. You need to ease off, meaning 1 or 2 clicks in, and then it's gonna hit exactly the same as I did here. So have it line here, it will line there, but you have to pull the needles a little bit in order to do so. And then not much changes here. It's kind of the same settings. When it comes closer to my bone areas again, you do click, click, click in, and now you are on this skin or this skin where it's super thin, like it's really, really bony area. And if you push a little bit too deep, as we did these little circles, it'll go through. Like it's gonna blow out my knuckles, but I have a dirty looking knuckles there, and that's how it's gonna happen. And then when we go on the other side, again, we go back to squishiness. Here again, you have to really stretch my skin. You have to bring the needles click, click out and pull those lines. Now, if you work a little bit higher, again, you hit this area and there's not much squishiness, it's just my bone. And again, bony areas, we go back to this skin. Again, you have to do few clicks in, and the needle goes quite far inside, which then again, as you did these circles, as I did the circles, you have to watch what happens. And if you pull a line, you're thinking, I could have a little bit more out needle hang. You do 1, 2 out and see how you are, and then you pull a line, you're like, okay, cool. And what I mean by all this is there's not a right answer how much needle hang you need to have. You need to watch what my skin is telling you. Like if you tattoo my arm or my hand, my skin would give you a feedback. My skin would say, if you pull that line and the line's not clean and not really black and saturated, My line says, yo, listen, you can bring the needles a little bit more out. We need a bit more punch. I'm like, okay, cool. Click out. We pull that line. Yeah, it's nice and saturated. Now you go to here, and then my hand tells you, well, there's a bone, man. There's bone. Like, ease off a little bit. And then you have to adjust, but you watch what the skin is telling you. Because I have a man's hand. When you do to females, they have softer hands. They're gonna have that squishiness all over the place. So you're gonna be changing less needle hang than you will be changing on me. Or you will be opposite, you'll be changing more on her than on me. Like, there's no one right answer. You have to look and watch what your skin is telling you, or what the client's telling you, what the client's skin is telling you, what happens. And then you need to change your settings accordingly. On every single person, it'll be different. On every single body area, it'll be different. Every single body part will be different. Like, even you can count, like, you got one type of skin, then we would have the second type of skin, third type, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many skin types, and you need to change settings according to that. You can't have one needle hang and do them all. You're gonna shred my skin, half will be shredded and half will be not in. There will be nothing in between. It will be overworked or not worked deep enough. Which means you have to change. Whenever you encounter different body part, it has a different name, and therefore it has a different skin. Therefore you have to have different settings, and you have to change your needle hang all the time. You understand? Yeah? It seems so obvious, it seems so duh, but that's how it is. When you tattoo, when the person did this, see my skin's squishy here, and it's easy to move around, whereas there's less squishiness here. When it comes to my ditch, like, there is squishiness, but there's that thin baby skin which you can blow out like nothing. Then you go into proper squishy. See, you can like grab that. So that would be that really thick skin. So he had to bring the needles more out. But then if you go around, you go to my elbow, and that's what was the distance between there, an inch or 2 inches, and you quickly change the settings, and you have to go nicer. And my bone's there, and it's rock hard, which means for him to blow out these lines are super easy, which means he had to change the needle hang. This area is probably one of the easiest to tattoo because nothing really much changes here. You're gonna have tougher skin here, a thinner one and tougher one there, but then all this is kind of the same. It changes here where it's the mid-arm, that's where it gets into that squishy baby skin, which is really painful for us, and it's hard to tattoo because it's really thin. It's that thin one what goes over here where you can pierce it through super easy, like that, like super easy to pierce it through, but then there's no muscles underneath what supports the hit, so it feels like it's endless deep inside. You can blow out these areas super nice. We have to like stretch them nicely and then work on one area at a time to really stretch out so there's no bounce, nothing gets pushed in too deep. But then again, you have to change needle hang, you have to change, like, you know what I mean, like you have to change, and the lesson of this video is changing the needle hang all the time, like all the time, non-stop. And I would say the gift and the curse is when you have a fake skin like this, it's one thickness all the way through. These companies try purposely to make one thickness all the way through, and then they call it a good product, and then you buy and you feel happy. If this would be inconsistent of thicknesses, you would moan, you would complain, you would be not happy that they gave you a skin that's inconsistent, whereas that actually should be the ideal product, where it would teach you what to do when you have inconsistent skin, but you still have to make it work. Where in one area the skin could be as thick as this, in next area it goes thin as this, but at some point, for example, if we get to like a tiger's nose, it would go as thin as this, but you still need to make it work. You still need to make it happen because the client still wants it too, and it just so it happens that it goes really close to bony area, but you have to make it work. If this goes on a shin, for example, if this is like side of the calf, if this is a leg, this area would be shin. You would have a shin bone here, and it would be curved around like that. Yeah, so imagine leg. So back of the calf mid part, and then you would have the shin here. So on bony area you would have the nose, and then more squishy area you would have the middle, but on a full-on muscle, which is the back of the calf, which is miles away from any bones, you would have to change the settings, change the settings, change the settings, change the settings, which means you change your needle hang here, you change your needle hang here, you change it there, you change it there, you change it there, and then the lower you go, this is where the ankle starts, which means you got less muscle and less meat. There's just more bones, more tendencies, and the surface is really hard. So again, even it changes this way, it also changes that way, which means to damage this part of the leg will be way easier, and then this could heal alright. But then you can overwork this super easy. But then if you change the needle hang, it will work the same everywhere because you adjusted your machine so it works everywhere exactly the same as it did here, so it does here. Needles more in because it's a bony area, needles more out because it's more fleshy area. How far out? You need to watch that and aim for that feeling where it works. Yeah, you always aim for the feeling. The feeling says this is too much. The feeling says this is perfect. Keep it this way. And you have to know what that feeling feels like. It just works. You pull a line, it's there. You're like, cool, this is my base setting. That's how it needs to go. So when you come here and you're thinking, man, it's not working anymore. You do 2 clicks, 3 clicks, maybe 4, and now it starts to work. Now it starts to shade, it goes in nice, it's beautiful. But then when you go a little bit lower, you start to feel that the settings you had here or the needle hang you had here, now it starts to shred the skin here because it gets bonier. There's less flesh, less meat, less muscle. Now you need to ease off. Now you need to take those needles in, and needle hang gets smaller. And then you work on this area and you're like, oh yeah, cool, nice. But then you go a little bit lower, which is really bone and a thin layer of skin over. So like this would be a bone, and then you would have a really thin skin on top of it. And you need to pack in that black solid into this really thin one, which means you have to really be careful, having needle hang far out that it works and it doesn't overwork. You have to really read the situation, really watch what the skin tells you, because the skin is the judge. The skin tells you when it's too much or when it's not enough, when the needles are too far out or not enough out. The skin is what tells you. It's not me, it's not the guy on YouTube, it's not your guy who teaches you how to, I don't know, like it's the skin. The skin is the boss, the skin is the guide, the skin is the guidance, the skin is the map. Skin says not enough, skin says too much, skin says try one more time, skin says yo mate, you shredding me, like I'm bleeding, I'm getting too sore, I can swell up, like you have to listen what the skin tells you and then you change yourself accordingly. That's why you have to watch like all the videos on School's account where I go off topic into these little things, so all like starts to link together. Because when you watch 1 or 2 videos on School's account, it only gives you a portion, like a really small portion of the whole image. Like if the thing is like this tiger, one video could give you the eyebrow section, that's it. But then you have all this that you still need to understand, and the more videos you watch, the more information you can link it together, and you're because he said this, now this happened, and because you said this happened. You start to see more the whole image together. But to recap this, I know I've repeated myself so many times, but really need for you to understand this is different skin, you have different settings, you watch what the skin tells you, you listen what the skin gives you the guidance, and if your different body part has a different name, it most likely is going to have a different skin, which means you're going to have different settings, different needle hang, and you never use the same needle hang throughout the whole thing. I know when we first start, we all have done it, we all did that, we all just brought out at some point needles just out, just as long as it's out, as long as it delivers some sort of ink to the skin, and we were happy. But when you are here on the School's account, you can't do that anymore. You have to learn, yeah? And then when you are here and you're watching this video, it's a good indication that you are a good person who wants to learn, who wants to succeed, because you made the step to be here. So congratulations for that. And if you managed to get this far in the video, congratulations on that as well. And we all did that. I know I did that, you did that, I see loads of people do, see loads of people carving skins and not listening. But the feeling tells you when it's good, when it's a perfect line. You need to adjust your needle to pull that one line perfect. And you're like, oh, this is it. Every single line has to be like this, and that's your measuring stick, that's your benchmark, and then you always aim for that. And if you need to pull needles out, cool, 2 more clicks out, 2 more clicks in, 2 more clicks out, 2 more clicks in. Like, adjust as you need, as many times as you need, all the time. I do like twice a minute, sometimes once a minute, sometimes once in 2 minutes, depending what I need, depending what the skin is telling me, depending what area I'm tattooing, depending what's happening in that time. So I do hope this gave you some sort of understanding of needle hang. Essentially, it's how far the needles are out from a cartridge. The more it's out, the more it packs in, the more it goes in, the softer it hits, and it's nicer. That's all you need to know. And just watch what skin does, and then adjust yourself accordingly to make it work. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.